My dear Masala podcast fans, I've written a book called Bad Daughter. You surprised by the title? I think not. I've never shared such deeply personal things before. I talk about growing up in poverty. I talk about my father's violence, my mother's murder. I talk about how I turned my pain into power, navigating mental health, sexuality, spirituality, and patriarchy. Bad Daughter is my story of going from Mumbai's slums to New York's billboards. But it's your story too. What's the message of this book? It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what happened to you. You still get to have the life that you want. If you're looking for a book to move you and inspire you to change your life, type in Bad Daughter by Sangeeta Pillai on Amazon or go to my website, baddaughter.co.uk.
Sharam, Badtameez, Chi.
I'm Sangeeta Pillai, and this is the Masala podcast, where we talk about all those things that we're not supposed to talk about as South Asian women. Sex, sexuality, periods, menopause, mental health, nipple hair, shame, and many more taboos.
And so, you have to fight these minor battles because once you do, someone else will find it easier.
It's time we heard the voices of real South Asian women, not just those we see in Bollywood or in mainstream Western media. It's time we had a real voice, a loud and proud and strong voice.
I never heard anyone say, how can he have the audacity to do that? It doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right.
How can she have the audacity to do that?
I've invited some incredible women to sit at my kitchen table, drink chai and put the world to rights. In this episode, I'm talking to the amazing Preti Taneja. Preti was born and grew up in the UK. Her novel, We That Are Young, by Galley Beggar Press, won the 2018 Desmond Elliot Prize for the best debut of the year. It's been described as a masterpiece and an instant classic by critics in India, America, and the UK. It's won so many awards, been translated into 7 languages, and will soon be a major international TV series. So why don't we start off? Tell me a bit about you and your background, where you grew up, what made you start writing.
I don't really remember when I wanted to be a writer. I think it's just always been part of who I am. Growing up, I had a lot of books, and anyone who grew up in this country in a second generation household will know that being good at school is something encouraged.
Very encouraged.
Right. So reading was always a big part of that.
Yeah.
And so it just, it was a different time to now. There was no internet, etc., etc. And, I loved books. I was always reading and always making up stories. And they were a real retreat for me from a world in which I just felt like I needed some control. And when you read the characters in that book, they become yours in a way that just is completely different from any other media. And it felt like an escape and a secret, that something that was just for me. So, school was, if you can do well at school, then you can kind of get away with anything else.
That's true. No one questions the other stuff that you do.
Right. Oh, look, my report card. Now I'm just going to go and do this. But books enable all sorts of subversive ideas and thoughts and identities that you can experiment with. And, if you go to quite you're in a household where there are certain ideas of how to behave, remember whose daughters you are, family honor is important, how the outside world perceives us. Indian daughters will all recognize these things, that you have to be a good girl, and even though I don't consider my parents being particularly strict, my mother in fact was incredibly free thinking, radical woman. She was absolutely trailblazing women, and quite kind of secure in her own identity. She really encouraged me to read as widely as I could. She used to travel a lot for her own work. Always brought me books by women from the places that she had been. So collections of Irish women's short stories, or Panchatantra back from India, or those comic books, Amar Chitrakatha, she used to bring them back in her suitcase, or tales of Indian women heroines that she could find in bookstores and stuff. She really wanted us to have this very particular kind of grasp of Indian mythology that was feminist and celebrated female power.
That's so unusual.
She was very
really
unusual. She was a very
within-
unusual
at that
woman.
time and of that, generation. That's fantastic. So talk to me about your culture. Which bits of British Asian culture do you connect with, if any?
I really celebrate having many strands to my identity, and I hate the idea that I have to pick a side. I just feel like that is so damaging for us as women in a new generation. Like when I look at women who are younger than me, who are doing really exciting things like Burnt Roti magazine and all of these different things that are going on for South Asian women and South Asian talent and so on. I wish we had had those things when I was growing up, but we didn't have them because we couldn't organize in the same way. So when I'm thinking back, to being a kid, I remember all of the things that made us, that we inherit from our parents. I cooked with my mum every day. We had Indian food for dinner every day. I could make a perfectly round chapati when I wanted to. She wore her sari to work, her salwar kameez to work. She ran her own business. And I could do that if I chose to. I don't need to prove these things to anyone. I keep them inside myself. They exist in my mind, in my bilinguality.
Yeah.
They exist on the page when I write, because I understand when I use Hindi in my book, for example, it's the same way as it came to me at home. The language that we were scolded in and loved in and worked together in as a mother and two sisters was Hindi. One of the formative things that I feel like I've always done in my life is try to insert the everydayness of this into public spaces, because it is everyday for all of us.
It is.
I wore my bindi when I was in Cambridge as a young student every day, and people who thought Madonna was cool were like, she's wearing a bindi. And then they have to rethink why they think that, because I'm actually Indian and I had packets of this stuff.
Exactly.
Every shape and colour you could possibly think of, It's so much a part of my everydayness.
That you don't even
I
think
never
about
even
those
question
parts.
it. I don't think about it. It's in
Yeah.
my syntax. It's absolutely in my self-expression. It's how I choose to put myself in the world as to a mixture of many, many things. And I feel really excited, moved and encouraged to see younger generations of women really claiming that and just being who they are with everything they have. I remember being at school. I went to quite a strict Catholic school. It was only because it was the best school in the town. It's like you have to do well at school. So you go to the best school in the town, and there was a school uniform. But by sixth form, you were allowed to wear navy blue, and it had to be, and white. So you could wear a white shirt and a blue skirt, or that was the regulation. It had to be a skirt. And I had a salwar kameez made in India.
Of the same colour.
Cotton blue salwar kameez.
Brilliant.
Some salwar kameez, because I just suddenly thought, hang on a second, this is really important. And I want to be able to wear my salwar kameez to school. And there was a little bit of pushback from school.
I wonder, yeah.
There was.
What kind of reactions did you get from the teachers or the students?
There was, students couldn't say anything because,
Yeah.
I was...
They could have, though. This is...
Yeah, they could have, but that was who I was. So, I remember the kind of initial slightly lame protest that actually it broke school rule regulations because it's trousers.
Yes.
But that's a question of language.
Precisely.
And a question of translation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And
I was just like, mate, this isn't trousers.
Yeah.
This is my salwar kameez.
Yeah.
And you might think, when you look at me, dress and trousers.
Yeah.
But I think salwar kameez. And so, you have to fight these minor battles because once you do, someone else will find it easier.
This is very true.
And the world changes in these tiny ways, and nothing is more important than that today.
Very true.
Literally this day in history, when we're looking at
all the things that are
all of
happening.
our uncertain futures in the hands of complete mad people
Absolutely.
who don't see us,
Absolutely.
don't want to think of us as humans.
Absolutely. When I was talking to Preti, I started thinking about my own identity. I grew up in India. I moved to the UK about 15 years ago. What does that make me? I'm British, I'm Indian. I don't know where one begins and the other ends. When I moved to the UK, I felt like I had to let go of my Indianness to fit into my new British skin. I got rid of all the brightly coloured clothes, the bangles, the bindis. The saris went right to the back of my wardrobe, never to be seen for another decade. The bindis were pushed away in favour of more neutral jewellery. I can happily wear a bindi with a sari, but I would never dare wear a bindi with a Western outfit because it feels too much, too Indian, too loud, too much proclaiming my Indianness for the world to see. But hang on a minute, I see people wearing bindis at festivals all the time. Bindis mark the spot between your eyebrows, known in Hindu spiritual circles as your third eye. This is the centre of your innate wisdom, your higher self. I bet most people going to Glastonbury aren't thinking of their higher selves when they wear bindis. But why do I feel so awkward wearing a bindi? This is my actual culture, my authentic heritage. Which brings me back to my sense of identity. Which parts of me are Indian and which parts of me are British? I don't know anymore, and I don't think it matters. I've become a mixed up collection, a beautiful sum of all those parts of me, and I kind of like that.
I feel my brain melt into a kind of molten fury because I've had to kind of navigate this idea that somehow to be acceptable one has to fit. And as a brown woman in this country, you're in a very particular position where modesty is used as a tool from every side you are looking to. Grant me the right one day to choose to have modesty. Don't tell me that modesty is how I should be if I'm in my South Asian family or when I'm operating outside that in a more mainstream white world. Because I don't have time to be modest for that.
Yeah.
First, I have to show that confidence, and it isn't arrogance, and it isn't, hysteria or angry brown ranting or whatever it is. It's not audacity. I've never heard anyone say, how can he have the audacity to do that? It doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right.
How can she have the audacity to do that? Sounds completely different.
Absolutely.
And we all know that phrase.
Absolutely.
Go in your life, go in your world quietly if you wish to, but do it because you feel absolutely confident that you don't have to choose between a double identity, because it's not a double identity that you are schizophrenic with. It's a dual reality, and it's forcing you to feel that way. Once you can put yourself in the middle of that and say, this is just who I am and I operate in both sides of my world in my own way, you can do what you want.
That's beautiful. That is really beautiful. Are you a writer by any chance?
Yes, maybe. So they say, but it's taken me a long time, to even say to myself, I'm a writer. I still wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
do you think it's that something as women we struggle with? Do you think men think this?
I wouldn't want to generalize. You'd have to ask the guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True.
But I suspect not.
That's going on as well. So with Soul Sutras, all the work that I do is around tackling taboos within the culture. So everything from sex, sexuality, menopause, periods, we have a lot of taboos to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk about some of the themes in your book around homosexuality and female sexuality. What made you include those things in the book?
I don't like being told no. And I don't like when the state legislates over the body. and state legislation over morality, sexual morality in particular, is kind of a disgusting social construct, which I think culturally, if we buy into that, then we're asking to be told how to legislate our morality, and that brings a whole bag of stuff with it. Shame.
Yes,
Is
shame
at
is
the
a
heart of
very
this.
powerful tool.
Shame is a social tool used by patriarchy to keep minorities, gender minorities, women in place. And this is another thing that I will absolutely reject and fight for anyone's right to say no to, because I've seen lives damaged by having to deny the fact that our bodies are natural and normal and beautiful, and they belong in temple spaces. They're sacred. You know, I have a degree in theology. I've read all my texts. I can absolutely find examples where women do the most beautiful and subversive to mainstream society things. You know, what does this come down to? It comes down to a worship of a kind of ideal of womanhood, a purity that does not exist.
Yes.
Doesn't exist. This question of homosexuality, the reason that's in the book is because, you know, of these colonial era laws. So one of the things I'm trying to do in the book is to link the ways in which Victorian thinking influenced Indian thinking about nationhood, construction, and construction of society and identity, right?
Yeah.
So this colonial era law that kind of influenced the ban against homosexuality, if you like, is one of the reasons why I made this character, Jeet, a homosexual in the book, and he's closeted, but also because of something to do with the play. The book is based on Shakespeare's King Lear, and the character of Edgar, which this character Jeet is based on, is a really complex person, and he's very good at hiding and dissembling and trying to protect himself. And I never was convinced it was just because he was running away from fear, the fear of being, you know, in the Renaissance period, if he had been discovered to have written against his father, yes, it was a life or death situation. But I don't know, there's something about his ability to trick people about his identity that really suggested to me someone who was used to keeping a secret so close to him about who he really is. And I have a dear friend who was gay and he died, and it wasn't because of his sexuality, because the community around him was very supportive of him. And he was nothing like Jeet, except in two important ways. First of all, he was gay, and secondly, he loved art. And so, you know, there's a love relationship at the core of Jeet's character, and it's probably the true, pure love relationship in the book, if I can reclaim that word for something good.
Could we talk a bit more about something you mentioned earlier about purity and women and the suppression of female sexuality, which is not in the scriptures? It is not our culture. Do you have any idea why that happened, when that changed?
Well, that really is a question about who owns the story.
Yeah.
All right. So if you have a Brahmin culture in which women are not allowed to be scholars, rewrite text, translate, do the work of dissemination, the cultural production, then you're giving over power to a group of people who always need someone else to maintain their own elitism. We're in a struggle as South Asian origin women, not just with mainstream culture, but like you say, in our own
culture and
houses.
Absolutely.
In our own minds about our own bodies.
Absolutely. And I think something I always talk about is if you grow up and you spend all your life ashamed of your body, it's a long journey from there to say, you know, my body gives me pleasure and I want an orgasm. It's a really long journey. And I think women who don't grow up in that culture find it very difficult to understand. And I keep saying it. It's a very long journey.
Do we even allow, like, the idea of female pleasure to come into our regular discourse, our cultural mainstream?
We don't.
But then you have to ask again, like, who's telling the story and why are they so afraid?
Because
What?
there's fear around female sexuality, I think.
But who's afraid? I'm not afraid.
I'm not afraid. You're not afraid. There are lots of people who are afraid, I think, and that's why
I've
suppressing
never
that.
met a woman who's afraid of her own body, like her own sexual pleasure.
Yeah. Not afraid, but if you're told it's
Right.
dirty.
Sharam.
Sharam is a massive, massive thing. And you mentioned shame before. Shame around your body. If you tell the 4-year-old girl, ye chi chi, sharam, then that's what you associate with your sexual parts.
Mm-hmm.
Then when that girl grows up, she's not going to go around saying, oh my God, my body's amazing and I want pleasure.
No, of course not. Especially she doesn't see anything in white culture that says South Asian women have sexual beauty and sexual pleasure in their own terms.
Absolutely.
And anything in Indian culture that can be honest and open about that. And that has changed a lot in India.
It's changing in India. It
Yeah,
definitely
I
is.
think
I've
it really
seen.
is.
Yeah.
And all different kinds of culture have production have responsibility for that.
Yes.
Movies, books, magazines don't just show brides in bridal, being married is about, let's say within cultural and social mores, if you're supposed to remain a virgin until you're married, as all advertising will suggest to you, then why do you look so shy on your wedding day? Because that's supposed to be the point.
Yes. Yes.
What's it allowing?
Yes. Someone said to me the other day that they were talking about this instance of this bride looking too excited, quote unquote, on her wedding day. Surely she should be very excited, but there's this whole idea that the bride's demure and shy and doesn't raise her eyes
that somehow
up. Pure.
Her own purity
Yes.
is being given as a gift to her future husband and his family.
Yeah, and that purity also determines her family's honor.
Because in that kind of thinking, there's an objectification of women as a kind of property,
Yes.
a mark, a badge of honor.
Yes.
Exchanged between
The
her
father to the husband. And it's again what
like a cow.
Like a cow. Yeah. Your father owns you, then your husband owns you. And that's your life. And then your children, your sons own you afterwards.
Yeah, basic stuff. Laws of Manu.
Manu,
Right.
exactly. Do you know anything about Manusmriti?
Manusmriti. Yeah, I've read it in translation, and I've read it, not the whole thing, but certain parts of it just infiltrate everything we think about
So I'm very
life.
curious, and I don't even know who to ask.
Go and read Wendy
So-
Donegal's translation of the Manusmriti,
I will do that.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back and ask you more questions.
and read We That Are Young, because We That Are Young is a kind of, it's not realist novel, right? It's a kind of hyper real, very epic and skirts over a lot of mythology. So it's meant to be a kind of sort of vision of India in a way, of the darker sides of, and in fact reality has way past the violence and the gender restrictions and some of the things that some people reading the book might think are overdone. Mate, no, just no, because reality has gone way ahead of and corruption and so on, of what I've written about. But hopefully the book will stand as a testimony to what was going to come. And there's a section in it where Jeet teaches the slum children, the Basti boys, some of the Manusmriti, because he's trying to socially engineer those who are most vulnerable into a way of life which is to do with purity, that privileges men over women in terms of being in the world, where a woman basically goes from father to husband to widow to mother to widow. And yes, there has been huge difference and movements. We're here having this conversation.
Yeah.
This
Which
is
in
amazing.
itself, yes.
But those things still exist. And it's still on all
Absolutely.
of us to keep on showing them up.
Completely. I'm starting to question what identity is all about. My two identities have merged together so seamlessly that I can't see where one begins and the other ends. I've always felt that when you leave your home country, you can never really return, because your identity changes when you set up roots somewhere else, and you can't go back to who you were. The India that I left behind doesn't even exist anymore. The Britain I moved to is changing, and it's terrifying. I'm Sangeeta Pillai. Thank you for listening to the Masala podcast. Masala podcast is part of my platform Soul Sutras. What's that all about? Soul Sutras is a network for South Asian women, a safe space to tell our stories, a place to reclaim our bodies, to tackle taboos within our culture, to be exactly who we want to be. Get in touch and tell me your stories about your taboos. Check out my website, soulsutras.co.uk, or get in touch via email at soulsutras.co.uk. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Just look for Soul Sutras. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe and leave me a nice review. It really helps.